Frugality gives me control to a large degree, and a lot of people, myself included in the past, we have this belief that finances are out of our control because things happen. The car breaks down or the refrigerator goes out. It's always something bad. And we just kind of learn this, what is it called? Learned helplessness almost when it comes to money.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Sean Morgan, a full-time educator and personal financial coach and speaker. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. I am super excited to have the one, the only Gerry Born, the Millionaire Educator, on the show today. If you don't know who Gerry Born is, you need to know who Gerry Born is. He is fantastic, and his name kind of gives it away, the Millionaire Educator. We already had an episode with Gerry, which of course I will link in the show notes at teachermoneyshow.com/podcast. You can find all the show notes there, and you can hear a lot about his story. And a lot of things we talked about with his approach using the 457, which is super powerful. But today we're going to talk about frugality with Gerry. Gerry, welcome to the show.
Wow, Sean, thanks for that introduction. I think my headset just split because my head is swelling. But yeah, it's great to be back. I love to talk about this stuff, and I appreciate being on here so I can rekindle some of these thoughts and share them with the listeners.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you real quick because the first time I was introduced to you through a podcast, your name was Ed. And I just want to, I want just like the quick, rundown of why your name isn't actually Ed and what that all looks like.
Well, I was blogging anonymously, and my nom de guerre was Ed Mills, Millionaire Educator, and I was really paranoid about just sharing any numbers, and I had this thought that my students and coworkers would stumble across it and then know my money stuff. And then the more I did it, I realized, I could have the cure to cancer on my blog, and most people are not going to stumble across it. And so eventually I just used my own name and put the numbers out there. And it was a little awkward at times, but it also helped make me real to many readers and listeners. So yeah, sorry about that Ed Mills confusion, everybody. But you got to admit, it was a pretty awesome name, Ed
It is
Mills.
very clever. I appreciate clever maybe a bit more than most people, and I thought it was funny. So I just wanted to get the inside scoop on why the name changed, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
I actually have students who have just found me on YouTube doing podcasting, and they're like, "Hey,
Oh,
found your podcast." I'm like, "What were you searching that made you find my podcast?" But okay, so yeah, it's a little weird, but whatever. That's kind of the
yeah.
world we live in.
We have lives outside of school.
Yeah. So, as I alluded to in the introduction, we're going to talk about frugal living, and specifically, I want to ask you about how frugality influenced your journey. So, I just want to get a quick overview so people know kind of what you did. Of course, if you want the whole story, everyone go listen to the other episode. But just a quick reminder, what was your journey like in education and in finance?
Right. Well, my wife and I we weren't bad with money. I'll say that. We didn't have a lot of debt. We had that student loan debt that I mentioned last time. And in Saudi Arabia, we paid that off. And that's why we were able to start saving money because we didn't have any debts. But I guess I became, when we got back to the States, and, it's very easy to get sucked into a high consumption lifestyle in the States and with credit, it's easy to spend money that you don't have. Somehow we just never fell for the debt trap, and we never started digging a hole financially. So we were always somewhat frugal. But I guess at a certain point, maybe it was something with Mr. Money Mustache, just reading about, frugality muscles. At some point, I came to realize that it's actually uh, a skill or something you should always be aware of, because just because you make more money, you shouldn't be spending more money. And as Paula Pant always likes to say about, mind the gap, you know, it, it was very powerful to earn money and have low expenses because that meant I always could invest money. So that's why I really became a strong adherent to frugal living, and I consider it one of my um, seven pillars of wealth building. And now I don't have to be as frugal now that I have some money and I'm older and I got a pension, but I'm still, I still kind of think things through before I, uh, spend the money. So yeah, and I guess now's a good time. A lot of people when they hear frugality, they think cheap, and it's just they're synonymous to many people. But basically, I view frugality as getting good to excellent value on your purchasing, on things that you need and things that you truly want. You're not just mindlessly spending money. Um, your spending becomes more attuned to what you actually like. So, for example, if I wanted, oh, there goes the church bells. Um, if I want to actually spend money on, good food at the grocery store, I will, because buying that out would be five times the cost. Or if I want a bottle of wine, I will have that at the house. I'm not going to spend, $10 a glass at a restaurant. So you just start thinking like that. And to me, cheap though is like, you get to where you're miserly and you're kind of a miserable person to be around. I've heard of people, you know, they're bad tippers. They take too many napkins at the restaurant or even toilet paper out of the bathroom. They eat cheap food just to save money. It might be unhealthy things. To me, that's cheap. I would never do that. So there is a difference.
Yeah, first of all, for those that don't know, the reason why there's church bells going on next to Jerry's, he's in Mexico right now. And I think this wasn't one of my questions, but I think this kind of shows your frugal mentality in action. Why are you in Mexico? What are you doing in Mexico specifically?
Well, I came here about a year ago and I finished all my coursework for my doctorate in finance. I did an online program and I'm trying to walk that across the finish line. But I actually love living in Mexico. I was a Spanish teacher, as many of you know. Every day is an adventure here for me. But I'm in San Luis Potosi in central Mexico. I have a two apartment. I pay about $700 a month. I can walk to like Costco in 15 minutes. I don't need a car here because I just walk everywhere. I have an awesome gym membership. Overall, I think if my wife and I could live here on 1,500 bucks a month, the way we live. But if you make it 2,000 a month, and my pension's more than that, I mean it's living high on the hog, at least to us. So yeah, I enjoy Mexico, and I'll probably be here for another year or two before I go do some other traveling.
Yeah, I love that. You're there just because you're living in a beautiful place, you're saving money, and wasn't your degree also cheaper there?
Yeah, I think all in, it's going to end up being about $4,000 for my doctorate.
Yeah, $4,000, not like a month, not a year, all in for his doctorate. Okay, like wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the thing I really liked about it was 16 courses, and we ran through those things like a course a month, only one course at a time, and it was pretty intense. It was great for my Spanish, and it was 4,000 bucks, and so I did it. I'm glad I did it. It's fun, and I learned a lot.
I mean, obviously you have to speak Spanish to be able to do that, but like that's pretty cool, right? So I think that this just really shows this frugal versus cheap, right? You didn't go to Mexico because you were being cheap about it. You obviously are getting great value from it, uh, but you were able to get a doctorate for considerably less than someone else who goes to, any, major school in the United States of America, and you're getting a quality education still, right?
Yeah,
You've got this high value to cost ratio. That's what frugal is, right? Because like luxury items, when you're just like spending just like, frivolously, you're gonna have a high cost. The value might be high, but like the cost is also really, really high. And then cheap, you've got low value, low cost, and frugal has got the high value and the low cost going on at the same time. And that's what we're aiming for, this sweet spot.
yes. Well said. Definitely.
So you lived this frugal life and it just kind of came naturally to you, which I think is one of the greatest blessings if you can just kind of naturally live frugally. But a lot of teachers today are like, I can't do that. I don't make enough money to even, save anything. Like how can they do that? Is frugal living like even like a possible way of actually saving money, or do you have to do something else? I guess is the question.
Well, I would say frugal living is definitely part of the formula to wealth building. You're going to have to do that to a degree, but you're also going to have to increase your income at some point if you're going to grow your gap so you have money to invest. But you're not going to have a high spending lifestyle and a high earning lifestyle in this profession. So you're going to have to do it. And I sound like I can hear the younger teachers. Okay, boomer, because here's the old guy talking about pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I'm not going to give you that speech, but I'm going to say is, you're going to have to find some way to create some space in your budget so you can fund the accounts that are going to give you your your financial freedom. Um, so, you can only cut so far down. And now I will say this, new teachers, they have a lot more flexible than people that are, married or have kids and a family. They can do things like I always think back if I'm sure you've read the book Set for Life by Scott Trench or come
Yeah.
heard of it. I mean, a great book. He just talks about the three big spending areas that people have, which are housing, transportation, and food. Well, with a little lifestyle design, a young teacher, they can rent a room in a house or in a three-bedroom apartment with other teachers to keep their costs low. And ideally, they could rent something near where they work, where they could. I mean, I've walked to my last job I had for 3 years. I walked 100 meters to the job. I drove maybe 10 times the whole 3 years because it was raining hard. Um, or they could bike potentially. So, if you can control those costs and then learn how to manage a kitchen, you've got those three components under wraps and you have more financial control. Um, this is probably a good time to mention because I find that those are the big three. For me, the little three that seem to eat up a lot of people's money are cable, internet, and cell phones. Those can balloon, and you've got to keep those under wraps as well. Do you need Prime Video, Netflix, and a cable subscription? Probably not. Pick one. You can find low cost cell phones. You can sometimes find deal on the internet. You're going to have to do things like that, especially when you're first trying to find your way financially. We all did that.
Yeah, I love that little three. I'm gonna steal that and run with that at some point. But I mean, like there's just there's things that have become necessities almost in our lives. Like we feel like everyone has to have these things, um, and because of that, the costs have gone up, and they go up. I mean, like my internet provider would just raise after a year they raise my payment and kind of hope I wouldn't notice. And I was like, what happened to my payment? It's like, oh, well, your promotional rate went away. Like, so can I have it back? Oh yeah, sure. It's like, so I have to call you every year to save, 20, $30 a month. Like
Yeah.
it's just, things like that. Those are the things you pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, I think about the meme I see all the time, and the choose your hard. It's being broke your whole life is really hard, and figuring out how to become a millionaire is really hard. Choose your hard. And every time I see that, I think it's true. I mean, both paths are difficult, but the one has a nice payoff where you have just a much improved life.
Yeah, I love that. Choose your heart. That's great advice because you can try and go the easy route through life. You can try that. Um, but you're always gonna, run into something hard. Hard is part of life. So taking the easy path initially will probably end up somewhere where you don't want to be at the end.
Well, well, and also, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is that when you start becoming more frugal, it just becomes more natural, and you just get really good at it. And it doesn't feel like you're depriving yourself. Like for example, Sean, when you come visit me, I have a room here, by the way, you can stay in, and you can take a little vacation. But I'm going to take you to some of my favorite buffet places here, and it's full of locals, great food. 10 to 12, $15, and it's really awesome. And I think this would be a $40, $50 meal. And so I know all those places. I don't feel like I'm giving up anything. It's just that you know, it's like anywhere you could spend all your money here too in Mexico. There's a lot of upselling and upscale places, but being frugal, I just have a nose for that. I can sniff those things out now, and we'll always be able to do that.
Yeah. Hey, I might take you up on that. Don't tempt me.
Come on down.
I went to Mexico on a cruise ship, right? Which is not the cheap way to visit Mexico, but my wife wanted to go on a cruise, so we did. But when we were like touring around Cozumel, one of those islands that are tourist traps, there's all those places right around the ship come off where they're trying to sell you the super expensive, touristy things. And we had told our tour guide, like, can we get some like real food, like the food that you would go buy? He's like, "But you want like the food I would go buy?" Yeah, the food you would go buy. So they took us to like this place that was just like a window in the side of a building, like someone like peeked out. It's like, what do you want? It was like, oh, we want, whatever. Like this looks good. I can't even read Spanish. That looks good. And it was dirt cheap, super good, but it was just finding the spot to get some good food instead of, the easy option, which was right there, and super expensive.
There's a lot of places here that just aren't touristy. I don't. I'm rarely spoken to in English here, which I love. So you got to come on down and check it out.
And my wife has been learning Spanish on Duolingo, and I keep telling her we need to go somewhere where she has to actually speak it so she can really learn Spanish. So we'll have to try that. So in your writing, you talk about intentional living and how that uh, influences the way that you're thinking about your preparation for independence. And you said that frugality was part of your seven pillars. Uh, First of all, I'd love to hear what those seven pillars are of building wealth, and then focusing in on frugality. Uh, how does frugality improve your sense of freedom? Because that's what financial independence is about.
Yeah, frugality gives me control to a large degree, and a lot of people, myself included in the past, we have this belief that finances are out of our control because things happen that your car breaks down or the refrigerator goes out, and it's always something bad. And we just kind of learned this, what is it called? Learned helplessness almost when it comes to money. And frugality just kind of made me realize I control so many more things when it comes to money. And I guess the one time when my mind was really blown by the frugal living was I was working a job in Douglas, Georgia. We were renting an apartment. It was a $500 a month apartment. It was a two, one and a half. It had a pool. I didn't have any yard work to do. But there was one month, for whatever reason, I think we spent with rent included like $850 for the whole month. We ate well the whole month, and I'm sure we went out and got some burgers and things. That's what my son really loved at that time. But we didn't really spend a lot of money. I thought, golly, it was what, 2017 or so, and we spent $850. That just blew my mind. And so that's why I'll always consider it one of the seven pillars. And obviously financially, frugality helps you because you've got this space in your budget where you can now you have money where you can invest. But like you said, personally, spiritually, you feel a sense of control, and you also know, like, if I wanted to go live somewhere else, like I can get an Airbnb for a month for like 500-600 bucks. I know I can go to the grocery store and outfit a kitchen for a month, and then I'll just kind of watch where the locals go eat, and I'm in the loop. Um, and like for example, I mentioned earlier to you, I don't have a car here, but I use Uber, and I walk to all the places. So I mean, even I don't hardly need an Uber, but like I probably spend a couple $100s a year in Uber rides. That's my car expense here. So that's very empowering. Just being able to benefit from the frugal traits. Now, as far as the seven pillars, wow, I'm doing this from memory. Let's see if I can. One is debt avoidance. Two is hardcore savings. Three is tax minimization. Four is income maximization. Okay, things like that to bump up my paycheck. Five is prudent investing. The use of index funds, low cost. Six is frugal living, and seven is something I refer to as using wealth multipliers, meaning things like travel hacking. So I paid $90 for my flight here because I use points. So people ask me, how do you fly all these places? Well, I'm paying about 10 cents on the dollar for my flights. So and also just another thing I refer to as a wealth multiplier, things like living off peak. I get to go places when no one's there, learning how to outfit a kitchen, getting a few culinary skills. So I mean, I feel super wealthy just by a few little things. Living here in Mexico, um, I feel like some deca millionaire. So those are the seven. I can't believe I remembered them.
Well, congratulations on that. I love this point you made, just like, offhand about like if you learn to cook really, really well, you feel wealthier because you're not opening up a box of top ramen and just, eating that. Like you're eating something that's actually delicious, and that kind of, that multiplies your wealth because you just have a better life, right? And it's so the wealth multipliers aren't just like things that are actually going to like make your number bigger, but things that make your life wealthier. I think that
Yeah,
that's really
well,
cool.
and then you become the envy of the cafeteria when your friends see what you're eating because you have stuff to bring to work too, and it's the things you like. And I've always noticed that most people that bring their own lunch, they're eating good things, right? So
Yeah. Uh, unless you're me and I was just bringing a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day or something like that. But it's probably better for me than getting Chick-fil-A every day.
financially, for sure. Yeah.
So you mentioned a new teacher has a lot of flexibility in housing. Is there anything else? Like, let's say we're talking to that new teacher. How can they, embrace this frugal lifestyle? What are some like, practical steps they could take to embrace this frugal lifestyle, but not have this like deprivation feeling? There's this, huge, movement of like, I'm young, I can be dumb, I'll just go get in debt so I can live this luxury lifestyle. That's like a huge thing right now. People are like all about that, which doesn't make sense to me. So how can someone do this frugal living thing, start building their wealth at a young age, but not feel like they're being deprived all the time? What are some steps they take?
Well, I think the first thing you need to remind young people, young adults, is that one of your superpowers is just the fact that you're young and your investments have more time to compound and grow. An old geezer such as myself, my investment horizon is much lower. So if a young person is able to put, a couple $1,000 a year, that is going to really work in his favor. And young people also need to be reminded of, I'm 61 now. I'll be 62 in December. But there more than likely will be a future you. And I think if I had to go to work right now and I don't like being on a schedule and having to do things. It's not that I don't really, I don't like bosses or anything. It's just that I have to get up and prepare and mentally get ready to go. That gets more and more difficult the older you become. And that's something you can conceptualize in your youth. But there's going to be a time when you're going to want to maybe take a year off or maybe not teach anymore, maybe fire or early retire. And you can do that, but it's going to take planning now. And I understand the appeal to live it up while you're young, but I'm just going to tell you, Keg beer doesn't cost that much. You don't have to go in debt for things like keg beer or a weekend beach trip. You can do all those things frugally. You you don't want to be paying for flights and hotel rooms on credit cards. It's as you mentioned, it's going to ruin your finances, and you'll be behind the eight ball for a decade. And you'll spend a decade possibly just trying to get up to zero. So if you can stay out of debt now and kind of build headway, make your goal. I've always heard people say, your first 25,000 is the most difficult. And that would be what you're putting in your retirement accounts, a brokerage account, IRA, whatever. You're just trying to get a little nest egg because you're going to start noticing that the older you get that nest egg starts mushrooming and it starts pulling its weight. You don't, if you keep feeding it, it can snowball. And I think it was 2018. I kind of moved my portfolio to 100% total stock market, and that year it grew $200,000. And I didn't do anything. I wasn't even working. I never made $200,000 working in a year, you know. And it doesn't mean I'm a genius. It's just that money can earn money by itself, and these are the kind of things younger people need to hear. And basically, that's why I started blogging, just putting the story out there because I never heard of this growing up. I didn't know about investing, and I never saw examples of wealth building. So, um, and I also steer. Actually, yesterday on a plane, I was talking to a doctor, a young doctor, and a physician's assistant, and we started talking. And oh boy, they got the fire hose for about an hour and a half as we flew to Dallas. But they didn't know some of these blogs. And so when you start sharing some of these things and they start digging in, they're just going to just blow their mind because they were smart people and they earn good money. And, teachers don't earn like that, but we have ways to juice our income. And, if you're going to stay in teaching and we want you to stay, it's a great profession. To be honest, I miss the kids. I love the kids. Um, and we need people that want to be teachers and don't just say, oh, teachers don't make any money, because what was that one survey said that's the third most common millionaire. So it can be done. It's just not going to be easy, but there is a path to wealth building as a teacher.
Yeah. I love that. Just that mentality of that you want to be ready for yourself later. Um, because if you don't do the hard work now, it's going to be much harder later. And I love the you kind of said this offhand. This is my favorite point that you made. Like if you just do a little bit of planning, you can probably still do a lot of those things for just less money, right? Going on the off season, going with travel hacking, instead of buying the craft high end beer, just buy a slightly cheaper version and still have a good time, like whatever. There are things that you can do to save money that's not going to drastically reduce the value, and you can still enjoy a lot of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had a pretty fun life, me personally, and there were years there. I mean, when you're frugal, you are going to notice when you get to like December and Christmas, like sometimes you're barely sliding into the new year. I'm sure many people have experienced that. But, that's because I was packing away a lot of money. My investing was not optional. Um, but it was worth, my point is, it was definitely worth doing. Um, I stopped sharing my net worth when we went to 2 million. Well, I mean, that was what, like 5 years ago now or something. So, I mean, it's great to be in a position where you have some money, because I certainly wouldn't want to be working right now. And one other thing people need to think about as your parents get older, they might need your help. And right now, my wife spends a lot of time with my mother-in-law because she's getting a little older, and she can go stay there days at a time, no problem. But if she had a job to go do things like that, it would be very difficult to do that after work, and because we live about an hour from her. So, there's many things that are going to be competing for your time as you get older, and they'll also be competing for your energy. So just think about some of those things.
And I actually have a whole episode on caring for aging parents. You can find that at teachmyshow.com/podcast. I'll link to that there. But it's just something to consider. Like if as you're looking towards the future, you will likely have to do something as you're caring for your aging parents, unless your aging parents were very intelligent with their money. You might have to chip in some. So that's something that to definitely consider. And then on top of that, the aspect of like if you had to work full time, uh, you might be stuck somewhere, right? Instead of being able to be like, oh, like I can go here, or oh, we need to go, stay with my your mother-in-law for a few weeks. Like I can just go do that, right? Instead of like, oh, well, she's declining, so I need to move there and find a job there so I still have to pay the bills, right? You're able to still be in Mexico and then just spend some time and then go back to Mexico. Like it just offers you more flexibility, which I think is
Oh,
fantastic.
definitely.
Okay, well, this has been a great conversation about frugal living. I have just got, packed in, point after point after point here that I think are just, some fantastic ideas. But I just want to, wrap it up. If a teacher wants to contact you, if they have a question for you, anything like that, I know that you're not super active anymore because you're living your life and doing a whole bunch of fun things. But if someone wanted to reach out to you, is there a good way to contact you?
I need to get my email set up on my Millionaire Educator site. I realize I haven't done that, so I'll put that on there. People need to get to me, and they can also join. I guess it's the mailing list that's set up through that, and I think you can reach me through that. Um, so, yeah, that's I've kind of streamlined a lot of things as far as I don't want a lot of like social media and things taking up my bandwidth. So I'll be there, and I got to write my free money article every year, so you can look for that for sure. But you can reach me through there.
I love it. Thank you so much. Just a final question for you to wrap things up. What is your number one tip for teachers to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life?
Yeah, I thought about this question, and I wrote, you know, don't drift financially through your career. And I did that for a long time. I was totally clueless. I mean, I didn't start saving money till I, what, my about 33. Um, I would say, develop a plan and start strategizing on how you can enhance or increase your income. For example, you work some type of side hustle so you can fund your IRA, or do a side hustle at your job where I did extended days 7 years at LaGrange. Was it fun? Not no, but I got paid 25% more every year. That's how I funded my 403b and 457s. Um, there are many ways to skin that cat and be creative. I was a basketball coach. Sometimes I paid 10% more on my salary. Um, so you're always trying to bump your income, but you got to plan and think about how you're going to do this instead of just throwing your hands up and saying it can't be done. Um, and always bear in mind, it's like what President Eisenhower said. Plans are, they very quickly they become useless, but planning is always essential. You're going to have a plan, and you're going to go to your plan B, C, all the way to probably Z throughout your life, but you just can't drift.
Yeah, I love that. And I'd like to point out for anyone who's like, it's impossible, I'm never going to get there. Jerry just said that he drifted until age 33. And not that long ago, he just said, I stopped telling everybody after I got past the 2 million mark. Okay, just let that sink in. If you're starting early and you're not drifting, how much more far along can you get? But even if you've like, oh, I've missed the boat, it's too late, it's not too late. Anything you do now is going to get you somewhere farther along, and it's so possible to get to those high levels as a teacher if we're willing to embrace frugal living and these seven other pieces of wealth building, which I think are fantastic. But frugal living is the focus right now. So frugal living is what's going to make that gap that's going to allow you to then, you know, just take off. You know what, Jerry, this has been just a fantastic conversation. I've really appreciated your wisdom. Your millionaire educator status is well deserved, and we appreciate you coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm always available. I want to see, millions of millionaire educators. They work too hard to, not build wealth. So, best of luck, everybody, and keep teaching and work those kids. And please stay in the profession. We need you.
Wow, isn't Jerry awesome? That was such a fun conversation. Now I just want to give you my quick takeaways, my Cliff Notes version of this episode, the most important things. There's so much. I'm just gonna throw a bunch of them at you. We've got no debt allowed them to save money. That is so key. Debt payoff is like as much as people could just put away towards savings would make them rich if you just didn't have debt payoff and you put all that towards savings. It is hugely important not to fall into the debt trap. The next thing, mind the gap. You have to be aware of that gap between how much you earn and how much you spend and keep that as wide as possible so that way you have that money to invest in. The way to do that is frugal living. The next thing, I'm gonna do whole episodes on this. I'm gonna research these ideas. The little three, right? How cable and streaming, internet, and cell phone are just eating into our monthly bill. And I'm gonna do some research on that and how we can get the best value for the least money. Frugal living, right? Best value, least money on those things. Then choose your hard. You can either live a hard broke life or a hard becoming a millionaire life. The choice is yours. I would choose becoming a millionaire. Then we've got frugality brings us control in an uncontrollable world. If you can be frugal, you can have that gap wide enough so that way when those uncontrollable things happen, such as your appliance breaks or a storm knocks out your window or whatever, you just handle it because you have that gap. That is the power of frugality. It brings you control. Okay, then we've got the seven parts of becoming wealthy: debt avoidance, hardcore savings, tax minimization, income maximization, prudent investing, frugal living, and wealth multipliers. Following those seven pieces, I think, are absolutely essential to growing wealth. I have a different framework that I use, of course, when I'm talking about finances, but I love Jerry's seven pieces of wealth. And I highly recommend that you learn more about those by going to his website, millionaireeducator.com. Then for the young listeners out there, remember your superpower is time, time for compounding and growth. I was working with somebody on a project they have teaching people about the time value of money. And if if Gandalf, this, I'm going somewhere with this, who's like 700 years old, invested $1 a month for his entire life, he would just be like a trillionaire or something because of the power of compound interest. I probably should actually look that up again and tell you the amount exactly, but it was a mind-boggling number on $1 a month, okay? Because compounding works with time much more than it works with money. So be really intentional about putting as much away as you can early on. Then we've got choose to do the same thing on a frugal budget. Like if you want to go and have a great weekend, just find a way to do it for less because the sticker price, the not thinking about it, just I want to book it now, I'm ready to go. There's always a way to get it for less. You can get it often for significantly less money. So look for ways to do that. Then we've got I love this phrase. We didn't even dive into it, but he said, "My investing was not optional." Make it happen and then live on the rest. So your investing is not optional. Yeah, you might squeak by at the end of the year, but investing not optional, super duper powerful. And then lastly, don't drift financially through your career. Make sure you have a plan, even if your plan is going to, end up getting flipped upside down, doesn't matter. Have a plan, stick to the plan, and then when you get punched in the mouth, make a new plan, right? That is what's going to allow you to be intentional and get to the destination you desire with your finances. So those are my main takeaways from this episode with Jerry, and just choose one of them to start thinking about, start working on, because they're all fantastic. And whichever method that you choose in your frugal living journey to be able to mind that gap, to grow that gap, to be able to become wealthy over time, just remember that as a teacher, you are already rich. Your wallet just needs to catch up. If you would like help on your personal financial situation, go to teachermoneyshow.com/coaching and you'll be able to find different ways I can help you there. If you would like to participate in spreading this message of financial empowerment to teachers, I would encourage you to talk to your administrator or to your district level about going to seankmorgan.com to find more information there. And regardless of which one of those you need, please like and subscribe so that way we can spread the reach of this more. Leave a 5-star rating and review. That's going to help more teachers find this, and then turn around and tell a teacher friend. I really appreciate it.
The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional.